This is Chapter 16, Discussion Number 5, Taxation. The government brings in money several different ways, whether it be for fines for corporations that haven't followed regulations, to speeding tickets, to government services. The primary way that the government brings in money is through taxation. Now, there's basic ideas of how the government should tax. Two basic principles. Some people believe that government should tax based on the idea of benefits received, whereas taxation is fair for those who benefit from the government action, so you tax people for what they do. An example of a benefit received tax would be a gas tax, because the gas tax goes directly into paying for the roads that are built. So you pay for the gas, you pay the tax, and then you use the roads that you pay the tax for. That's a benefits received. Another theory or principle is the idea of the ability to pay, is that there are some people who have more money and are more able to part with the money than those who make lower incomes. And so taxation is fair by charging those with higher incomes higher amounts of taxes. So those are two general principles. Now, there's another type of tax called an excise tax, where the government just essentially taxes a specific item for its regulation. For example, a tobacco tax is that money goes toward paying for tobacco regulation, and then also paying, it was part of the deal for the tobacco law that was passed back in the 1990s, saying that the taxes would help pay or reimburse the government for all of the smokers' lungs and emphysema and all the ideas in their Medicare and Medicaid programs for smokers. So that is the excise tax. So when we take a look at taxation, we can measure it by having it fall into three different categories. We have the idea of what is called a proportional tax, or what is known as a flat tax. And this is where everyone pays the same percentage of income in taxes. This is not everyone pays the same amount, but everyone pays the same percentage. So we could say 10% of everyone's income, and so a millionaire would be paying $100,000, and then you guys might be paying, you guys might make $5,000 a year if you have a job, so you'd be paying $500 in taxes. That's a flat tax. An example of that, most states these days have a flat tax where you put in your income, they say multiply it by this number, and then this is how much you owe. That's a flat tax. Another type of tax is a progressive tax, and that is where the higher your income, the greater the percentage. For example, the United States has 4 or 5 now income tax brackets, and that as you make more money, you end up paying higher percentages of your income toward that tax. So the federal income tax is an example of a progressive tax. So if you make a minimum wage and you don't make a lot of money, you might be charged a 10% tax, whereas the millionaires are being paid 30-some% on their taxes. So that's an idea of a progressive tax, and it's based on that ability to pay principle. Now, the last category of tax that we're trying to measure would be a regressive tax, where the lower your income, the greater the percentage is taxed. So an example of this would be a flat fee or a use tax. For example, a gas tax is in many ways considered to be a regressive tax because everyone drives a certain amount. You can't drive an absorbent amount of time over a year's time. And then everyone pays for about the same amount per gallon, and therefore they pay the same tax, no matter if you are a multimillionaire Bill Gates type person versus someone who works at a fast food restaurant or works at a basic job. And so because they're still paying the same amount, regardless of how much there is, the regressive tax says that the people who make lesser amounts, they're paying a bigger chunk of their of their paycheck toward that regressive tax versus the multimillionaire who's essentially paying the same amount of money. So that's an example of regressive tax. And so that's how we qualify taxes here in the United States and for economists in general. This concludes discussion number 5, taxation. It also concludes the Chapter 16 discussions for government spends, collects, and owes.